Hey, what's up, mediums? Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes, and I am here with my co-host, Scott Moon, right down here on the bar. And today we're talking with science fiction author Robert M Cambell, otherwise known as Rob. Rob is the author of the Trajectory series. He is also a contributing author to the Explorations anthology put on by Woodbridge Press, and he's a member of the science fiction writers collective Sci-Fi Explorations. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic that you're actually talking live with me here and not live on Facebook, because I get the text on Facebook, and when I'm not paying attention to the collective group, I come back and there's like 300 unread messages that we do not allow Ralph Kern to read. Otherwise, he gets all in a tizzy. So we get him out of that.
It is a rare treat.
Do you feel guilt when you have to read all those, and you feel like I'm behind? I got to get caught up. And
no, I just don't read them.
Obligation to read.
I just type LOL, and that pretty much covers everything for the whole day.
It's all garbage. There's
there's no substantial information.
We were talking about my dog dying. Why are you typing LOL?
My mom just died. LOL. Okay.
I saw one where somebody kept saying, like, it was one of those feeds you see, like a meme, but this woman said, I got a great new job. And it's like, WTF, WTF, WTF. What do you think that means, Mom? Well, that's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Yes.
Well, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right.
So, Rob,
we're off the rails
now that we're way off topic already, and we haven't even been broadcasting for a minute.
Yeah,
Rob,
that was quick.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing?
Sure. I've worked in the tech industry for 20 years, and I've been interested in reading and writing science fiction for all of that time. I started writing the Trajectory books in like 2014, and it came out of an idea that I'd had with some friends. We were talking about video games, and spaceships don't really move like they would in real space in most science fiction. So that was kind of the kernel of the idea. All of the warping in and then covering an entire star system in like a couple of days. That's just crazy.
Right.
So that was sort of the kernel for it, and just blew up from there. And that's kind of my introduction to science fiction writing.
So Trajectory is your first anything, like your first just story that you've written, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a bunch of technical writing and blogging and stuff over the years. Really, the actual first thing that I ever wrote and got published was a short story that I wrote for the local newspaper when I was like 11 years old. And
yes.
It was about computer claws, and he'd come down the chimney and bring the kids all of these ridiculous gadgets in the far future. It was ridiculous. There are no copies of it anywhere, so don't go looking for it. But.
Well, that's very sad. Computer claws.
Yeah, awful.
Hashtag, put that in the Twitter. Hashtag computer claws. We are on Twitter today, by the way, if anybody's watching live. So if you want to go to Keystroke, at Keystroke Medium, Twitter at Keystroke Medium, you can put questions up there.
Absolutely. And if you're watching on our YouTube page live, you can type it just in the chat window on the right side of the page, or you can just watch and not comment at all. So Trajectory is your first indie published book, your first published book at all. What made you want to start writing? I mean, a lot of writers, when they start out, they have a whole huge backlog of stuff that's not published and it's never going to see the light of day, and you just said, bam, I'm going to do this and put it out there. Talk a little bit about how that came about.
It was kind of funny. I found myself with some time on my hands, and decided to just start writing this story. I'd been thinking about it off and on for a couple of years, and a lot of the process that went into creating it was like, how do I put together a story that can present these particular events and who are the characters that are going to be involved in that. And I just started writing. It was NaNoWriMo in 2014, I think. And it was the first time I'd done that. It was like, just, man, what the hell? Let's see what comes out of it.
Right.
And, I got going, and it was pretty immersive. The story just sort of fell out. And
did you win that year?
I did not. I wasn't doing it officially. I was just sort of participating in the background. And
I've done that a few years. They always want you to upload your stuff.
Yeah. I didn't really want to be a part of that. I mean, writing's a solitary thing, right? Why do I need people around?
Well, it's when it was new. I remember I did it years ago, and it was really neat because back then we didn't have quite as many writers groups, and stuff. So it was kind of fun to see some other writers. But now you almost feel obligated to do a certain amount of social participation on one more platform. And then it's a Twitch catch-22.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I find it a little weird, and this year I tried doing it. Nathan Heistad of the Explorations group was in it and cranking through, and because right now I've been in the process of my next books. I already had like a fair clump of stuff, and the story's like been changing as I've been writing it. And that really kind of impacted the amount that I was able to do. Like, I think I probably deleted almost as many words as I wrote this November. So yeah, it's still in flux. But
words should still count if you're editing, I think. But yeah, I like NaNoWriMo. It's good. So sorry.
It's good motivation. Yeah,
it is. It is. A lot of people really like it. So I don't want to think that I'm bashing NaNoWriMo.
I'm
just more of a lurker with NaNoWriMo than I perhaps used to be.
He's up in a tree like they're writing words again, Jen. So I'm curious, Rob, with Trajectory being your first indie published work, your first work period, how did you get started going about creating the story? I mean, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to get away from the kind of Star Wars-esque, Babylon 5-esque of actual aerodynamic flight in space and fighters and all that kind of stuff. And what made you create this kind of hard science, if you will, fiction?
Well, it's always been a leaning of mine. As I mentioned, I read a lot of science fiction, and I love science fiction movies. And the story itself came out of this one particular idea, and I can't really talk about it because it's a main piece in book 2. When you read it, the big sort of climax towards the end is just this one scene that I had in my head, and it fell out of that. And it was like, what things do I need to do to get this crew in this ship to this particular spot in space? And all of the stuff that came before that just sort of ended up there, which was a weird thing. And I mean, like, so much of it came out of that. Like, all of these characters were, became somewhat more real as a result of it. But then there's all of the backstory that goes into it, all of the technology that goes into it. The spaceships in the Trajectory books are pretty small compared to what you get in a typical like space opera or something like that. They're more like a NASA ship than they are like a Navy vessel.
More based in reality than spectacular.
Well, a little bit. I mean, I still had to fudge reality. They've got fusion drives because that's the convenient way to produce a lot of power in space, even if we don't necessarily have the technology yet. But yeah, in a couple of years, maybe.
So
there's a big difference between fusion, understanding of fusion, and our understanding of warping time and space and all that.
Well, I don't understand how that works at all, but
yeah. Oh, well, you get some dilithium crystals and you put them in this thing, and then
you flux the capacitor.
It's very simple, actually.
Well, actually, yeah.
Now it's all out there. Now we all know.
Yes, watch this show if you would like to learn how to use dilithium crystals in your warp matrix to go 8 times faster than the speed of light.
Right.
Well, so the story grew out of an idea that you had to build up to with your characters, and the characters kind of grew out of there. Did you just sit down and start writing it, or did you, like, for one book that I have planned next year, I'm doing a crap ton of pre-writing where I've got characters and plot and subplots and all that stuff that I'm planning out. You just kind of sat down and wrote it, right?
A little bit. So I got a couple props here.
Oh, yes, we like props.
Props are good. Well,
I started with these little pieces of paper, and like literally I've got character names and diagrams and like, you know, stuff like this. I've got a book full of these things and like notebooks. That was like my scrivener for the first couple of books. I jotted everything on these things, and some of the notes got a little more elaborate as I got into like the timeline stuff, because the big part of the first two books was a fairly rigid timeline. You know, the ships are moving through space, there's something pursuing them, and I've got to keep track of all of these different things, their positions, that stuff. So like I've got maps of
I love maps
stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of the process for doing that. It wasn't straight from brain to page, but it was pretty close. And then when I got stuck, I'd just go back to the notes and do some scribbling.
Post-it notes are a time-honored method of being organized.
I feel like, you know, without a whiteboard, I feel like the Post-it notes are a good way to go.
There you go.
I've actually purchased a huge, enormous whiteboard and then have not used it one time.
Yeah.
So
that's the other thing, you know, if you're using a whiteboard, you get something on it that you really like, and then it's there for like 3 years. So you just never erase that thing.
Somebody runs a finger across it, and you're like, what did you do? No.
Yeah, no, it's all permanent ink.
Coincidentally, you can get, if you write on a whiteboard with permanent marker and you think that you've completely ruined it.
This is great science. This is great science.
Take a dry erase marker and then draw over that, like right over what you've written, and then erase it. Comes right off. You're
saying the marker is itself an eraser?
Yeah.
Well, you have to draw over it, and then you take your dry erase eraser and erase, and it comes off. It disappears.
We did this at work. We have a person who's really crazy about the whiteboard where we keep track of certain things at work, and so we wrote on their permanent marker, and everybody about lost their mind. But we'd already done it. Then if you just trace over it with the dry erase, and it comes right off. And I was like, it's like magic.
It is.
Science or magic.
Mind is blown. Just
mind.
I just want to point out.
This
is the first episode that we've instructed people how to use dilithium crystals and taught people how to get permanent marker off a dry erase board. So we fixed the world basically just right now, and we haven't only been broadcasting for 13 minutes. So
I think we're done here.
And show click.
Well, you know, it's interesting that because we're talking to more and more authors that are more of the hard sci-fi type of writers, and I think that the readership is pretty large, but I think you got to make sure you're not writing to the wrong group of readers. I mean, like if I tried to write hard sci-fi, I'd have to do a lot of homework. But if you write a space opera, you know, so I mean, how do you find your tribe? And once you do, you probably got to stay true to them.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing, and you know, I've been worried about that because I think that I've found a few readers now, and you know, you're always a little bit. Hard sci-fi readers are a special breed of reader.
Yes, because they're the first ones that'll be like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You get a lot of feedback from your readers about stuff that they either saw or liked, or
I haven't. I wish I did, because you know, there's stuff in there that you wonder about, and it's like, am I hitting the right notes here? Is this too techie? Is it not techie enough? Is my math wrong? That sort of thing. And it's like, you know, some of it'd be like, yes, sure, I've got the math wrong in a couple spots, but you know,
but it's still a lot closer than Scott's math would be.
I don't know. I've got a good book here you can borrow if you want. It's called Introduction to Space Dynamics. It's that was kind of my Bible for working this stuff out.
And by the end of it, you're just slapping yourself in the face with the book. I just want to know.
Yeah, the book's in rough shape.
Yeah, well, that's great.
So you've got 2 books out.
Yeah.
One you just published back in July, is that right?
Yep. Just July. Released it on Amazon. I did a pre-order for that, and yep.
So what's the series? What's the series arc? What are we looking at here?
I'm looking at 6 books.
Okay.
And that was another sort of funny thing. It's like, you're writing your first book and you're going through all of the stuff in your head, trying to figure out where stuff is going. And then all of a sudden, bam, you've got 6 books that you've got to write. And it's like, I did not expect that going into NaNoWriMo like 2 years ago. That's what I would be doing. But
right.
That feels like the right length for this particular story. And I'm hoping I can pull it off.
Now, you did NaNoWriMo again this year, didn't you?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I kind of, I don't want to say half-assed it, but I mean, I was deleting stuff and rearranging stuff while I was doing it, and got to a point where I think I've got the bones for my next book, book 3, done, and moved on to book 4, which will pick up after that one.
Wow. So you have 2 books out and published. Are you say you moving on to book 4 after writing the bare bones of 3? So are you now just going and finishing out the series to find out where it's going and then write out the rest of the books, or what's your process in creating the books?
No, I think my next steps for this are going to be to flesh out a bit more in book 4 and try to get the main plot points down for that, and then I'll go back and seriously finish book 3. I've got a bunch of obviously it hasn't been to an editor yet, and for the record, I am my own editor, which is doesn't help me much. If anybody knows anybody like to work with a science fiction guy, give me a call.
So your first 2 books have not been through? You haven't done freelance editing on them at all?
No.
Okay. Well, which is, I mean, it speaks to how you edit your books, because I'm looking through your reviews and they're all fairly positive. I mean, you've got 73% 5-star rating on your first book. So
yeah.
There are a lot of people that edit their own work and don't get that amount of good.
It's not easy, and I mean, everybody that you talk to says don't try to edit your own stuff. It's a dumb thing to do.
Right.
But that's me.
It depends on it. There's no one way to do things and stuff like that. For me, I think I definitely need some help. But usually, like we were talking about before the show, I put a lot of work into it. I use a couple of different programs to kind of get, I use one pro writing aid, which is it's a cheap one, and what I use it for mostly is it'll find repeated words.
Yeah. And that's actually a huge thing. Yeah. Towards the end of my publishing phase, like my very last edit, I went through and did find and replace on a few particular short phrases that I caught myself using, a bit. The phrase he was a bit stupid,
a bit, yeah,
for example. So I found 53 occurrences of a bit in this book, and so I just go through them and rip them out. There were, I don't know, 5 or 6 different phrases like that were percolating, and
I keep interrupting. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's pretty much
what that made me think of, though, as you're talking about the find and replace, is it makes it good, because I know editors traditionally they work from a style sheet generally. From the research I've done. So you make a style sheet and you put a bit on there. In my case, felt. In the last book I wrote, I used the word felt, like he felt this, he felt that. And it was ridiculous how much it was in there. So then I could just find all those and see if there's a better word or if it could be eliminated. Yeah. And you can do that for anything that you have problems with or words that you habitually make a mistake. And that'll vastly speed up the editing process, because if you just try to read it from the beginning, you're going to get tired.
Oh yeah,
right. And it doesn't work as well. So you need to use those tools that are free nowadays. So
you mentioned style sheets. That was another key thing that I did when I started writing. I needed to keep a set of rules. I learned this out of years of software development, but I mean the same thing applies equally to writing.
Right.
Having a strong set of rules that you could fall back on. Just as a reminder in some cases, but I started with Elmore Leonard's 25 rules for writing, and I sort of cribbed off of those. Like, he's a very sparse writer. He doesn't use a lot of description, and so I took that. And
I love Elmore Leonard.
And science fiction is a medium that ends up getting bogged down in a lot of exposition. In some cases,
Right.
The long paragraphs of descriptive text about like technology and stuff. It's like, no, I'm just not going to do that.
Right.
It's like any type of world building. I went to a conference and Patrick Rothfuss was there, and he was giving a talk at one of his seminars, and he talked about world building. And the general rule of thumb is you do your world building for fantasy, but any story, whether even like a crime thriller, has an amount of world building. Sure. But you generally put in 10% of what you know about the story world goes into the story. Mm-hmm. And Rothfuss, he said that he actually only put in 4% because he did so much world building. Yeah. And his example is he likes money and coins. He collects coins. Mm-hmm. So he can tell you like what type of coins were made that had been out of service, that on another continent of his story world. That didn't go in the story. It wasn't needed.
I think a lot of writers get confused with story building or world building and narrative exposition. And I think that when they're writing, they do their world building and then just leave it in there because they like it. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to want to know about this because I love it. And that's a mistake, I think.
If you love the research, absolutely. You want to share it all the time. And
a lot of the times, like they'll put it right in the front. And so you get like 15 pages of world building before anything other happens, and it's mind numbing to read. And I don't care about any of that because it's not going to be integral to the story. I don't care what happened 50 years ago at the beginning of the story. I want to know what's going on with the story right now.
Yep. Yeah, and to that, one of my main rules was rather than exposition. I had to make sure that stuff was being revealed only through dialogue, as much as possible. Like, having characters talking with one another and, revealing bits of stuff that way.
That's one of the great things I like. I know, Scott, you've read them, but the Song of Ice and Fire series, Martin does this, I think, very well, but sometimes it's a little over the top where he does, you find out about, say, the backstory with Jamie. You find out about that through dialogue. Mm-hmm. The some of the Children of the Forest stuff, you find out that through dialogue and all that stuff that is very, you're like, why are they calling him the Kingslayer for like a book and a half? And then you finally figure out, oh, okay, but it's in a cool, like, they're in a conversation. It's just not just a, here you go with
when you do find out that it is pretty powerful scene. And that's the thing too, is leaving a little bit out is part of what invokes your natural curiosity.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Good points.
So do you write in first person, third person, or multiple points of view, or how is
I usually use somewhat limited third person. I'm doing a short story / novella thing in first person right now. I figured I'd try doing a crime story because that sounded like fun. And it blends itself to first person stuff when you've got like the unreliable narrator.
Right.
So yeah, I'm playing around with everything, but I keep it limited to like one format per book, obviously.
Right.
So are you a full-time writer now? I saw that you were a software engineer and you mentioned it earlier, but do you write full-time now?
Yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm like, semi-retired, I guess, from the tech industry. And I've just been doing this.
And in your Amazon profile, it says that you and your wife are living on a farm or had a farm at one time?
That's a stretch. It's we've got a couple acres and we're growing some stuff. We've got some vegetables, and not right now, obviously, because it's covered in snow. But that is the thing. Yep.
Snow corn.
Snow corn. Well, that's very cool. So you've been doing this for 2 years, and you have 2 books out now. You have a planned 6 in this series, but also with your novels, you write short stories and novellas, which you just said, and you were featured in the new Explorations anthology, First Contact, that's coming out at the end of January. Scott and I, hopefully get with the program. Nathan, Scott, and I also have stories in that anthology. Can you talk a little bit about your story and what came in with that?
Well, sure. I don't want to give too much away again. That's the thing. How do people do these types of questions, right? It's like, tell us about your story, and then it's anyway. Yeah. Stephen Moss, I guess, came up with the prequel for this one, and it's about we'll say a series of first contact stories that are set around a common occurrence that some researchers in space have discovered this thing, and so there's like a bunch of different groups of a United Earth Federation kind of group that are going out to explore these different alien races that they come in contact with, or are going to come in contact with.
Is there 14?
I think it's 14.
I think it's 14.
Right. Yeah, and so my story is when Ralph Kern suggested I do one about a Canadian space mission, which I thought was pretty a funny idea. Canada has some space stuff. We do a lot in robotics and stuff, but we're not really shipbuilders. And so I figured, let's go all in with this. And what do I think of when I think of Canada? I mostly think about trains instead of spaceships. So my ship has got a train on it, which makes more sense, I think, when you read it.
Okay, that's awesome. Canada to the stars.
Train. Yeah. But anyway, we've got this big, massive Canadian ship, and they go out into space and try to meet this group of aliens. You'll have to read it.
That's gonna be awesome. See,
we like spoilers, but no spoilers.
Spoilers, but no spoilers.
Was it easier for you to write the short story than the novel? And did you do a whole bunch of planning for the short story? Or did you just sit down and write it?
Yeah, a bit of that. I didn't do a whole lot of planning for it. This was, more, I think, freeing, because I wasn't. I was allowing myself the kind of space opera science fiction, with slightly less, I don't want to say less believable, but a little more fantastic technology, using a train for gravity, for example.
Interesting.
And the concept, they've got this displacement drive which gets these starships to the different locations. It sort of fell out of that, and it was it came out pretty easily over a matter of about a week.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to reading that one. You got my curiosity stoked about the train for gravity thing.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to yours yet, Scott. I have read Josh's, and it's good stuff. I think there's going to be some.
I'm a little nervous about mine. I haven't published much short fiction.
It's different, isn't it?
It is harder, and like I said, it's somewhat liberating because you can keep things simpler.
Yeah,
have a natural propensity to make things more complicated and put lots of characters in there. And in a short story, it's not really a place for a bunch of characters. Although I did a cameo for all the other authors in there.
Yeah,
they all have a job, or at least a mention of their job.
For the viewers and the listeners of the podcast later, just to give you a little fill-in information about Explorations, the anthologies, the first one, Through the Wormhole, Woodbridge Press put together.
Right.
Nathan Heisted is the publisher and owner of that company, and he wanted to do anthologies, but he wanted to do it a little bit different. He wanted to kind of theme them and link them together. Whereas like Samuel Peralta, he'll do an anthology and he'll just say AI, and that's the common theme is AI. And where Nathan wants to do is he says, okay, we're going to create this world, and in this sandbox you guys can write. Go. Right. So we did the Through the Wormhole anthology, which was basically all wormholes and wormhole related. where what happens if the wormhole closes and they get cut off from the rest of humanity? What happens, for instance, in my story where the wormhole closes and they are trapped inside the wormhole? So very, very cool way to bring an anthology together. For First Contact, basically, like Rob was saying, this alien kind of probe shows up with all this information and says, hey, you know, there's these 14 other planets because there's 14 authors or 14 aliens that are out there. Some are good, some are bad. And then there's this big alien evil race that is hinted at, and that is kind of the overall, this is what we're going to do.
That's
now,
the sandbox.
Right. The cool thing is about this First Contact anthology is that a lot of the stories in here are linked more so than the wormhole stories, whereas like my story is linked with Ralph Kearns, is that his story has the first part of a conversation between our two ship captains, and my story has the second part of the conversation between the same captain. So if you only read one story, you only get one side of the conversation.
That's pretty sneaky.
You read both stories, you get the entire conversation. And Nathan was very adamant about, I want the authors to work together. I want you guys to link your stories together so that when people are reading them, they're like really cool Easter eggs when people read the thing and they're like, oh, that happened back in Josh's story, or Rob's stories mentioned this. And so I think that's very cool and a very interesting way to do an anthology. Rob, I have not read your story yet. It's up next on my list. And I think that all this, even through the wormhole anthology, all those stories are very good and very cool takes on the theme of the anthology.
Yeah, I was really impressed with it. I mean, I was not involved in that one. That was sort of my introduction to the group, and it's solid writing. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So you talked about earlier, you mentioned that you are just started with Scrivener and you used to use like Post-it notes and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about your process in writing, how you use Scrivener, how you put these things together?
Yeah, so I've been making use of the research section in Scrivener a fair bit. It's pretty nice for capturing notes and documents. I tend to abuse my web browser when I'm writing. I've got 100 tabs open. Like most of Wikipedia, I think, is on my computer. So it's kind of nice to be able to just sort of dump that into a section in Scrivener and have access to it. The character and scene sketch things are pretty useful. And I've noticed, to my delight, when I started on book 4, I'm able to just drag those things across documents and drop them in. So,
I know, isn't that awesome?
Yes.
I figured that out recently too. I'm like, oh man, that is so neat.
Yeah. Lots of little stuff like that really make the process more pleasant. And like switching between the views, like outline mode and what do they call it, scrivenings mode, when you just sort of dump the whole manuscript into your view. Stuff like that are useful to flip back and forth. And like if I get stuck on structure or trying to figure out what I need to write next, it's always helpful to have an outline available so that I can write towards that.
Using Scrivener for how long now?
About 2 months.
2 months. And I know a lot of writers that are watching this up, they may want to know the answer to this question, is what's the best way to get started with Scrivener? Because, if you've never used it,
it's overwhelming. It does have a bit of a learning curve on it, but it's not as, I think it's just sort of visually daunting at first because there's, it's got like a deep toolbar and it's easy to sort of get stuck in a document that isn't for writing. So the best thing to do if you're new to it is spend a few hours and go through their tutorial. It's actually pretty good. It walks you through it, teaches you how to navigate around through the binder, which is that thing on the left that has all of the different document links, and how to go backwards and forwards through history. It's a bit like a web browser in that sense, because you've got this toolbar with like backwards and forwards buttons. As you click through the binder, you can go back and forth through that. And figure out where focus mode is. That's the sort of focused writing mode that like blacks out your screen and gives you just a page for distraction-free writing.
I don't think I've used focus mode.
Yeah, I use it a lot.
Yeah, for getting rid of all of those extra windows on your computer. It's
I always open those windows and I feel bad if I delete them. So I can.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but what if
It cracks me up, Scott.
Scott,
who is not at all the technologically expert at all when it comes to anything, he sends me these screenshots of his Scrivener layout.
Yeah.
And I about went into a seizure looking at what he was doing, because he's got the main window open, but then he's got like 18 little dialogue boxes that are open, and like the split screen double thing and the color coding, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
What I learned is that if you make a Scrivener link, because I was doing something, and you click on the Scrivener, it actually opens a new window, and if you close or minimize Scrivener, then that stays up like a web page. And so what I've learned is I made a separate in research. I make like characters, geography, politics, all those different pages. I make them all different color fonts, and then I open the Scrivener pages, and I can have like literally every single part of my universe spread around my giant screen, and I have my writing, and then I have a picture of my book cover in a section. So it's like sandbox writer paradise for me. So
that's neat.
It is a little bit retarded the way I do it, because I get distracted, and I'll spend an hour setting up my page, and then I should have been writing. But once I get it set, boy, I take off. I did some serious writing this last week because I had everything all the stars are in alignment, so to speak.
Yeah, that is a good cautionary note. Is you can really get lost in Scrivener. I find myself. I sometimes have to step back and say, Rob, you're getting a little crazy with organizing stuff. Time to just do some writing.
Right.
Yeah.
The neatest thing, though, and Josh taught me this, fortunately, because he's my Scrivener go-to coach. If anybody has questions, make sure they bombard him with them. But now I have it set up so I get to a certain point in my writing process, I can literally just hit compile. It's ready to be uploaded to an ebook. And so it's nice to have it just because I used to spend a lot of time. I did the nuclear method from the Smashwords, where I put everything in Notepad, stripped all the code out, then I put it back in a preformatted Word document. Then I had to search and find all the headings and italics and bolds. And it took me like literally 2 months to format it. Now I just hit compile, and I have a new book.
Yeah. That was one of my concerns. So I came from, I was using Pages on the Mac, which is like it's a Word clone basically, but it's a little bit more stripped down. And I'm using Calibre to produce my ebooks. Mm-hmm. And then I, developed a workflow that let me go from formatting in Pages to my ebook or EPUB or Mobi file in Calibre without losing anything. And so, it looked reasonable. I was really worried about going to Scrivener because I heard that it had a compile function, and I was worried about losing the formatting. But it turns out that was actually pretty straightforward. I set up a template for my main chapters, and the compile option dumps it out to, I think I'm still using Word file as like an intermediate, and then that goes into Calibre and ends up looking the same. So
my editor wants everything in Word.
I think that's pretty standard, right? Like Word is still kind of the de facto manuscript format for most editors and publishers.
Yeah. And I'll give her name out because she's really good sometime during the show. And she has a couple different. She has $1 a page option, and she has some more complex ones that cost more. But what I'm going to do this time is different. I usually did it in Word, and then I used Josh's technique where I imported that into Scrivener, and then I divided it into sections, gave it chapter headings, and made my ebook. This time I'm going to basically open up my Scrivener on one side and my Word. I'm just going to scan down both documents, just make the changes, so I don't have to, hopefully in theory, not waste a lot of time reformatting, and it should be a quick process.
Do you use track changes when you do this with your editor?
I do track changes in Word, yes, and it's BZ Hercules is the editor. Her name's Beth, but it's bzhercules.com, and she does something that I've never seen editors do before, where she sends me 2 versions. She sends me the Word document with the track changes with everything she changed, But then she sends one that's basically where most of the changes have been accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put them up side by side, and you can go through and make sure she's not changing stuff that you didn't want changed. And it makes the process light years faster.
Yeah.
And it's very clean, and I really like it. So I'm gonna try to incorporate that into my workflow.
Cool.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know how that works because I'm interested in that. Anything that can cut time off production, I'm all about.
No, my first professional editor I ever used, it took me literally longer to do the editing, to implement the editing suggestions, than it took me to write the book. I mean, it took me 4 months, and the editor was very good, worked very hard, but every single line of my book had something. And I would agonize over every decision.
Wow.
Like, can I change this word? I need to do that. Oh, this is right. Oh, this doesn't make any sense. And it took me over 4 months. I mean, I'm working a lot. I'm talking long days of writing, not just like 10 minutes a day. I'm talking 3 or 4 hours a day. But then this is just so much better. The way, and maybe I deliver a better product to the editor now. I do a lot of pre-editor stuff. So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Talking about how much time you spend on your projects, what's your day look like, Rob, when you sit down to write?
Well, coffee, always coffee.
Yes,
indeed.
And then more coffee. I am a bit of a news junkie, so I do tend to spend a little bit of time on the interwebs. Although I'm also like a morning writer. I find I'm usually better in the morning. So depending on the day, I'm either like reading news for a couple hours, and then like I'll spend probably 2 or 3 hours writing, or I'll start right away, and those are usually the better days.
Right.
So yeah, mental.
Do you try to hit like a word count? I'm always curious about how they.
I usually set myself like a 2,000 word goal. Good days, I'll get 2,500. Bad days are like 800 words. Sometimes they just don't want to come, and I don't want to force it when that happens. So
right.
But I hear. You interviewed, what's her name? Starkey? AJ Starkey?
L.A. Starkey.
L.A. Starkey, yeah. And apparently she can write 10,000 words in a day, which is staggering.
You have to actually kind of meet Lori in person to know the kind of intensity that she brings to life. She's a get things done kind of person. It's incredible. But she writes full time. She's got assistants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I've tried to get a hold of her like on Facebook or something, and she turns that stuff off.
Yeah.
I'll send her a message, and 6 hours later, you can tell she probably just wrote a book or something, and now she's like, that's the time to best.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, though. Distractions, I do try to minimize those when I'm, getting down to writing. I'll get rid of my instant messenger windows and turn off Facebook and Twitter and that stuff. And I try to be as focused about it as possible because it requires some concentration, and using
it's easy.
The whole brain.
There's a book called The Art of War.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's a short book. Well, no, it's the War of Art.
You're talking about the War of Art.
Not the art. I'm talking about the War of Art.
That's different.
My bad. The War of Art, but basically the whole thing of that book is about resistance and how we have resistance and the things we do to avoid writing, and it's a natural process. And I can't remember how they explain why you have it, but getting on Facebook, updating your web page,
reading the news, and all that. Yeah, it's noise. It's keeping you from work.
Yeah, and it's once you step on the train, it's hard to get off of that. But if you get into a good morning writing procedure like you do, you probably really get some good work done.
Yeah, ritual's sort of important for that. And
coincidentally, if you watch the Keystroke Medium show before you write, your productivity actually goes through the roof. And,
it does.
So if you make that kind of a morning ritual, let's see what Josh and Scott are doing on Keystroke. Mm-hmm. And then didn't you just go out and write a whole novel that sells 10,000 copies?
Pro tip.
So,
Pro tip right there.
Watch Keystroke Medium before you write, and your writing will be a lot better.
It'll also make you popular at parties. You probably get better gas mileage.
I know it's helped me a great deal.
Popular at parties. I like that. I think we should make that our tagline.
Be popular at parties.
Popular at parties.
Got to be a lot of writers at the parties.
So what do you have? We're almost done with 2016. What do you have planned for 2017?
Well, I got these 2 books kicking around that I need to get out. We've got the explorations thing in January, and I'm not sure where we're going with that afterwards. see what Nathan and y'all have to say. There was talk of maybe some spin-offs, sequels, something there. So I want to keep a little bit of space available. And this novella thing, I would also like to, put out. Those are the writing things that I've got on.
The first-person mystery thing you got writing?
Yeah.
Is that more of a contemporary kind of like whodunit?
No, it's taking place in the same universe.
As Trajectory.
As Trajectory, yeah, on the
Cool.
Mars colony. Yeah, as a function of trying to develop some backstory for this stuff, I decided that I needed to develop some of the social constructs and political and criminal elements that take place in a city that's underground of about 50 to 60,000 people. It turned out to be really useful for the backstory that I needed for books 3 and 4, but it's possibly going to be good enough that it's worth shipping on its own. So we'll just see what happens there. Hopefully it'll see the light of day.
Yeah, I look forward to checking that out. That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
I like. It's very cool that you're writing it in the same universe as books that you already have published. I wish that more authors would kind of see that that kind of avenue. Whereas, so my point of this is David Weber has written like 14 books in his Honor Harrington series, and you really only have to read 7 to really understand and enjoy the series. Richard Fox has written 9 of his Ember War, or there will be 9.
The last one's just out now, I think.
Last one's out, but not in audiobook yet, I don't think.
Yeah, it's out in ebook form.
Paper.
I listen to them all on audio because I love Luke Daniels reading, and the books are very good. But anyway, so my point is 9 books. As I'm reading through the 8th book now, I think. Love the series. Ready for it to end. Ready for the whole climax of the Zaros and all that stuff. There are authors that just take it and just go with it, and they don't ever have an ending in sight, and you get like 14, 15 books into the series, and you're like, I don't know what to do anymore.
Robert Jordan or some of these guys.
Yes, exactly. But the idea of taking, like, say you have a 6-book series planned for Trajectory, and then the idea of having a spin-off in the same universe, which, people who like the series who don't necessarily need the Trajectory story to continue on, but to have a different story in the same universe, that I think is where you'll find, like they say, write in your genre, but I say take it one step further and write in your universe. If you've got a universe that people like and enjoy reading, and keep it in that universe, bring different characters in. That's one of the plans I have for my upcoming saga that I have had planned for years. Is I have a couple trilogies planned with a certain set of characters, and then a couple other trilogies planned with another set of characters. They kind of interlink. I think that is a very cool idea. So I'm really interested to see that work.
I hope it does. I hope it does work.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show. I'd like to point out to our viewers for 2017 season, we are going to start our sponsorship program. We're not exactly sure how it's going to work, but we are going to have a sponsorship program for writers and publishers to sponsor an episode, and then we will advertise, obviously, in some kind of form or fashion. We are not this week, but next week we are moving to 2 shows a week. We are going to have our regular Monday morning show, which is still going to remain predominantly an interview show. And then we're going to have a Thursday night show, which is just going to be us talking about whatever we want to talk about. It could go horribly wrong very quickly, but it'll be fun while it's happening.
That sounds like it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and hopefully,
let's watch the train wreck.
And hopefully, being at Thursday night instead of Monday morning, we will have a little bit more live viewership than we do. I know work and some things hamper viewership on Monday mornings, so maybe Thursday night will be a little bit more lively. So if you're interested in that, we'll be posting up a schedule here in the next couple of weeks for the Thursday Night Live show. So, Rob, it's been fantastic to have you on the show today. Do you have any place where readers, viewers of the show can go and find out more about you and your work?
Sure. I've got a infrequently updated blog at robc.net. That's ROBCEE.net. I am Rob C on Twitter, and I've got...
It's Rob CE.
CEE, yeah.
CE, yes.
And I've got a newsletter that you can sign up to as well. Links on my blog. So
Links on
feel free to check that out.
What's the URL for your blog again?
ROBCEE.net.
.net.
Romeo, Oscar, Bravo, Charlie, Echo, Echo.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
There you go.
Phonetics. Those links will be in the description and also in our blog post that'll come up later in the week. Rob's books Trajectory are available on Amazon, and his short story for the Exploration series will be out hopefully the end of July. Be sure to pick that up.
January.
That's what I meant. January. Yes. That's what I meant.
July's fine though.
But if you want to buy it in July, that's cool. Buy it in July also.
Definitely be out in July.
Definitely. And hopefully we'll have a couple of reviews by that time too. If you're frequent viewers of the show and you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you like it, leave us a review or subscribe on iTunes. That would be fantastic. We also have a Facebook page, Keystroke Medium. Facebook/Keystroke Medium is our Facebook group, I think. Or you can just search Keystroke Medium on Facebook and find us. We also have Twitter at Keystroke Medium Twitter. So, Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate your time out of your writing schedule to come on and talk to a couple crazy dudes about writing and fiction. We like it. Hopefully our viewers do as well.
Thank you both for inviting me. It's been a good time.
Been phenomenal.
Our post show should be a blast too. So
a
lot of people probably wonder what happens in the post show.
We should figure out a way to do like a videotape our pre and post show, and then put them out.
That
there.
should never happen. That's
flashing lights.
So when we have a disco ball that drops down, right? We're like,
guys, it's early on Monday afternoon. I can't party now. Come on.
Right.
Oh, yes, you can, and you will, sir.
Fine.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on live next week. Have a good day.
Yep. Take care, everybody.